Peace and all good, and greetings once again from this time in the library of the Shrine of St. Anthony here at with the Companions of St. Anthony here in Ellicott City, Maryland. We're going to continue with this kind of ongoing series of reflections on the Sunday Gospels, and as we've been doing recently, to look at probably the reading you're not going to hear too much about, which in this case, this week, it would be the epistle reading from Ephesians. So before we reflect, let's listen to that text. Brothers and sisters, I, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received, with all humility and gentleness and patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. One body and one Spirit, as you were also called to the one hope of your call, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, and through all, and in all. In the second decade of the 20th century, in 1914, the First World War broke out, the so-called Great War, the so-called war to end all wars. And it was a kind of a meaningless slaughter of a whole generation of mostly young men of Europe, going on for a period of 4 years. And at the end of that war, the victors, the Allied powers, brokered a so-called peace with Germany. But while on one hand, the Allies might have seen it as a just conclusion to the war against an aggressor, the people on the other side saw it as an oppressive regime, an oppressive experience that unfortunately led to the next war to end all wars, the Second World War, and really the ongoing violence that we continue to see even into our own time, from the Second World War to the Cold War to the Korean War, which is still not over in a certain sense, right? To the endless wars in the Middle East, right? We live in a world that continues to be torn by violence and driven by people who seek, quote, justice. The problem with that, of course, is justice for fallen human beings is a very subjective concept, right? What's just for me might be oppressive for you. What's just for you might be interpreted as oppressive for me. What's the answer? Well, St. Paul gives us the answer in that reading today. It's the call to peace. You may have seen bumper stickers or things or billboards around. If you want peace, work for justice. Perhaps it's the other way around. Perhaps because of our limited understanding, our fallen nature, we can never really work out a true justice. Because again, what's just for me might be oppressive for you, or vice versa. But the ground for justice, because justice is God's work ultimately, right? Ultimately, in the end, God will bring justice, right? What we are called is to provide a ground for that. And what is the ground for that? As St. Paul teaches us, peace, right? And what is peace? And he tells us what that means. Humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace, building peace, creating peace, being peaceful people is the ground for God to work out what is truly just. How do we get there? By realizing and by making real something that's a very popular topic right now, especially with the current Holy Father, fraternity. But fraternity is not a goal. Fraternity is an existential reality, as they say. Fraternity is who we are. Because we are, as St. Paul says, one body, one spirit, people who live in one hope. Right? We are all brothers and sisters. As St. Augustine says, the other, whoever the other might be, is our brother or sister. And as St. Augustine says, whether they like it or not, we are all brothers and sisters, ultimately. Right? The call is to live that out. Right? We are a fraternity. The call is to make it real in the world in which we live. Right? How does that happen? Coming to the realization, as St. Paul continues, that there is one God, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. Right? We are all united under one God. We are all brothers and sisters. The challenge set before us is to live in peace and to create fraternity, a fraternity that is already there, but which, because of our fallen nature, is often torn apart. The call before us is very simple, but very challenging, to be people of peace. As St. Francis loved to say, may the Lord give you peace.